All right, Caitlin, all you.
All right. Just getting rid of that notification. Um, Hello, everyone. My name is Caitlin. I am the resident artist for ArtSnacks Quarterly. So if you haven't been to an ArtSnacks Quarterly stream before, welcome. The really fun quarter where we got acrylic paint, so we get to practice some of our painting techniques. And I really love all the products that came in this box. And then I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself though. But if you are new, I am Caitlin, and I have a background in multiple types of art mediums. I did my coursework in art education, and that requires you to take like really focused classes on every single type of medium, so that you're well trained in pretty much anything that could come up in the classroom. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I became a multidisciplinary artist. I still practice lots of different types of art, but I kind of settle around like illustration, I think just for like convenience and stuff. And I like keeping a sketchbook. But in that sketchbook, I draw and I paint and do all sorts of things. So that's a little bit about me. Um, Moving on from that, I do want to introduce you with the piece of artwork that we're going to be working with today. And this is other than I did go in with a small blue detail pen, I used only the supplies that came in the quarterly box. So I'm really excited about that. And you probably recognize this image. It's based off of a print by Hokusai, but it might not be the print that you are most familiar with. That print was actually part of a like 100-part series of Mount Fuji. And so this is one of the other views that was drawn. And so it's actually my favorite view that's part of that series. So I recreated it with the supplies from the um, spring quarterly box, and I'm excited to show you how I did it and give you an in-depth kind of demo on how to make your own. So thank you for going ahead and switching the spotlight. So you can see here I used the paper that came in the quarterly box. So let me show you real quick, which is this paint on white mixed media paper, and I used a full sheet, so I did not cut it at all. If you would like to use the same size fur. And it is, if you don't have this one at home, this is a 7 by 10 mixed media paper. And then I took the washi tape, and this is the one I have like completed. So I did do washi tape around the outside of this one initially. And so I just did the washi tape full width around the this thickness of the border. Um, And then moving on, I will be using all of the supplies that came in the box. So let me just give you a small overview. So I already talked about the paper. I will also be using the set of gel pens that came in the box. Um, I'll mostly already did my initial sketch that I'll be using. But I did forget one part. So I will be using briefly the pencil that came in the box as well. Um, the flat shader brush will be, is actually the only brush I used to complete this demo piece. But I did pull out just like another, this is a Princeton round brush, just to have by my side in case I need another brush. So I have that here. I am using the SoFlat paints that came in this box. And not included in the box, I am using a couple palette knives. I'm actually not doing any like mixing on my palette. I did all mixing just on the paper itself. So I won't be using these to mix. I just like using these to pull paint out of my little paint pots. But if you don't have palette knives to do that, you can just use like a plastic spoon or really anything. You can also pour it out. It just kind of, I don't like getting the top of it too messy. And then let me make sure I mentioned all of that. Let me just show you how I started to make my initial sketch right here. So I pulled, like, let me show you. This is what the print looks like. So this is a wood block print in its like original form. It's a wood block print, um, which means like all of this is carved out of a piece of wood and then gets ink put on it and then it goes through a printing press. Um, and so it's not actually painted. Um, if you didn't know that about these images, it's a print, like a big stamp. Um, and this is what it looks like in color. Um, and then I have another print out here of like a black and white version that kind of just has the line work. And then I went over it digitally and kind of traced out which lines I wanted to transfer onto um, my piece of paper. So that's where you see this like red color around the outside. That's where I was like digitally drawing on this image to figure out what line work I wanted to transfer. After that, I printed out the image in a similar size as the paper I was working on. And then I used a piece of graphite transfer paper behind this, and I just went over my red lines that I had put on here. And I wasn't too like uh uh like nuanced. I wasn't as nuanced as some of these areas um that have like very tiny details in the waves. I was a lot looser with my transfer. You can still see it has a lot of the detail of the waves and kind of like gets the point across, but I left off some of the tinier details that I knew wouldn't transfer as well with the style I was reproducing this in. So this really was just here like as a guide rather than having it as like an actual trace of the image. So that is how I got this up to this point. And one of the reasons I really wanted to do this reproduction of this piece was I was really inspired by our color palette. Um, I really love pulling from art history to create pieces of art. Um, and like, I don't know, seeing them in a different color scheme or seeing them done in a different style. And I've always really loved the Hokusai woodblock prints. And so when I was thinking of like, oh, I'd love to incorporate like an art history element into one of my lessons this quarter, I was like, I think our color palette is actually going to match up really well to this print. And I could kind of make like a reproduction. And if you joined my last live stream, we made some color mixing blocks, and I'll just show you real quick what that looks like in case you weren't part of that stream. And what this shows is it shows each color on its own here through the diagonal, and then um, through this grid, it shows like what is it like when red is mixed with blue, it's going to make this color. And this is also a red mixed with blue. It's just two slightly different ratios. So this one I think is like a 50-50 ratio, and this one has like a little bit more blue in it. Um, and what this does is like it allows you to mix every color with every other color in like your current palette. So you could expand this grid or shorten it if you had more or less colors. Um, and it kind of gives you like a preview of how your paint's going to mix so you can see the range of your palette that you're working with. Um, and so what I did was I pulled this out and kind of looked at it next to this print here and decided like, oh yeah, I can pull this color and, this color out to do like the sky. And, what colors would I need to make that? Okay, I'll need this yellow, and then I'll need the yellow mixed with a little bit of the green. Um, and so on and so forth. So that's how I kind of planned out the color scheme for this piece. Uh, and I think that creates something really fun to take a like recognizable piece of art and change the color palette. Even though this one I feel like it's pretty similar to the original color palette, but we don't have the white on the waves. They're like the really, really light green. And I don't know, I think that adds something really cool to it. And you could do this with any, like you could change the color scheme completely um, if you wanted to as well. Like you wouldn't have to match. Like I tried to match as best I could, but you can also just do mix it up and do something really different from the original as well. Something else that I thought about and why I thought this piece would be good for kind of like translating into a small painting like this is because this was a wood block print. It already had a limited color palette here, so I didn't have to like interpret or like narrow down the color palette to work with. It like already is like a select, like a small amount of colors are used to create this print. And that's really helpful sometimes if you're like recreating like a more like a Renaissance painting or something. It can kind of be a little bit trickier to figure out like what which colors you need to complete the whole composition, where this is already working, only with like four colors just about. So that really kind of takes the guesswork out, which is nice. And um, I had something else to say, but I'm sure it'll come back to me. Um, and something I wanted to do that was a little bit different from the original with mine is I am using a very loose, very painterly style with like my brushwork. Where since this is a woodblock print and a kind of like that stamp look, it's going to be very exact. And like it doesn't have any like you can't see the brushwork in it. Um and here it's like you can see like my brush strokes and stuff in this. So I wanted to keep it really loose, really expressive. And I like that we can kind of get the same like uh feeling across. And so just like keeping that in mind if you're um when you're reproducing this, if you choose to reproduce the same image. But that does remind me what I was going to say is since these woodblock prints already kind of have a limited color palette, and I mentioned that this print is part of like a large series of like hundreds of prints. If this one doesn't interest you, I encourage you to look up Hokusai's other work, and you might see one in there that inspires you, like the composition inspires you, and it will also already kind of have a limited color palette since he mostly worked in that woodblock medium. So definitely look up there. Like I said, I think this one is part of a second series of Mount Fuji. I think that has like 100 views in it. And the one that is more well known called the Great Wave, that one I think is part of his first series with Mount Fuji in it. So like there's even like multiple series of hundreds of images to pick from. So definitely look up his work and check it out if you haven't before. So I'm going to get started here now. And the first step is going to be pulling my paint out of their pots. And I'm not going to get too much out. I'll add more if I need it later. And I'm keeping all of my paint separate. So like I mentioned, I'm not doing any mixing on my palette. Um, And I'm probably going to get about 2 scoops out of each color. Gosh, I feel like I just has so many things I wanted to say about this piece, all kind of coming out at once. Um, I recently did the Great Wave Lego set, um, which is really fun. If you haven't done any of the Lego like art sets, highly recommend. It was really fun. And one of the things that they did with this set is that you could um, listen to a podcast that was like around the same length that it took to put together the set. And it went on like a deep dive of the art piece and the artist, and it interviewed different, like I think it had like a panel of different people that it interviewed um, for this piece, and it had like a museum like expert. It had a like a current like modern woodblock artist talking about like the techniques of woodblock printing. And I think it had one of Hokusai's like biographers, I believe. Um, and it was really interesting. I studied this piece in school, so I had already learned some background on it. But I feel like I learned more about the piece, The Great Wave itself. And I didn't learn as much about Hokusai as an artist. And I learned a lot through that podcast. And I'm pretty sure you can just look up the podcast on like lego.com or something. I don't like you don't have to have like the art set to listen to it, but yeah, it was really fun. And something that I learned was that this print wasn't like a piece of fine art, if you will. Um, it was made to be like this super commercialized and reproducible image at the time. So like I think that's really funny because that's still how this piece is used today. Like it's like on like it's an emoji, it's on people's cell phone covers, and like I mean I have a print of it hanging up in my house, um and people still order it as prints to use as like quick kind of like framed art type thing, and that's exactly what its purpose was um, back in the day, even though like other famous pieces of art like were initially like a single painting that was only one of them, and then now we've reproduced it and you can have a print of it. But I thought that was kind of cool that it was like still kind of being used for its like initial purpose. Um, but also kind of crazy that it's like this fantastic piece of artwork and it was kind of just like made on this like he was just like finishing work for his like agent basically, like oh yeah, like here's all of my artwork. It's kind of like if you've ever like heard of like licensing your artwork to something. It's kind of like that, and then they would take it and reproduce it and sell a bunch, and the artist would get some of the money from it. And anyway, it was very cool. um so highly recommend looking that up if you're interested. Okay, so I'm gonna try to I would rather you get a closer view of what I'm doing instead of showing my palette at the same time, but just as a reminder, this is kind of what I have spread out. And like I said, I'm going to be doing all of my mixing like on my paper itself. And I'm going to pull my reference image to the side here. So I'm looking at it at the same time that I'm completing this, just to get like my color placement right. So I'm going to be working in the background first and complete this like yellow background. And initially, I'm just going to paint it with this uh, yellow color unaltered. So I didn't mix anything into it, and I'm not going to add anything right away. And I'm not going to be very precise with this around the edges either, because this paint is pretty opaque. Uh, the next layer that I do, like when I come and finish the wave and stuff around here, it's just gonna cover up anywhere that I went over, so it's nice because you don't have to be very precise. The pencil marks are really just there as like a loose um, guide. And I am going to be trying to work slightly quicker, I would say, than like normal, because I do want to be able to mix on my paper, and acrylic paint does dry pretty quickly. So if I want it to be able to mix at all on my paper, I'll have to work fast. But that is to your benefit because we'll get a lot of this piece done on stream today. Just filling in this whole background with the Naples Yellow Deep. And I'm definitely hoping to finish the stream with being able to peel off my washi tape. So that should be pretty satisfying to do. It wasn't when I did my demo piece. So if you can't stick around till the end of the stream, definitely watch the playback just for just for that. Okay, so now to get some of the like variants here in the background, I'm going to be mixing in just a little bit of the a light phthalo green, and I'm not mixing it, pre-mixing it. I just pick some up on my brush, and I'm just going to be mixing it kind of like into my painting, right on top. And I'm trying to blend, but I don't want to blend all the way where I'm just like totally getting like that green gets all the way mixed in. Um, just enough to kind of blend the edges enough and so it doesn't look like a super hard line. Um, but I don't want to, you know, keep agitating my brush over and over again until this just kind of becomes like a smooth background, if that makes sense. And the drier the background, the more or drier the background, the less it's going to mix um, on the paper. And what this does, it's just creating just enough of uh like a kind of gradient in the background to allude to like a cloudy sky. And that should be enough there. And I will just let that dry and then go work on a different part of the painting. I am rinsing my brush off now. I didn't rinse it off in between those color changes, but I'm rinsing it off now and I'm gonna dry it on a paper towel. And then I'm going to start, I think, just at there's this like very bottom wave right here, that I'm going to paint that in first, and I'm just gonna paint it straight with the blue paint, nothing mixed in. And that is the cerulean blue hue. Okay, so did that, and then looking at this painting, or looking at the print of the original, it's like it's darkest blue up here, and then it's the same color blue that's used throughout um, this whole area, but like the white lines that are getting thinner as they go up kind of create this like visual gradient of it being a light blue. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of both. Like we're going to be using some like of the light green strokes to go up like the wave, but I'm also going to create more of a gradient in the background that actually goes from dark to light um, on the background of the wave itself. And to do that, I'm going to reference this mixing card again. So I'm going to be using the blue as is, and then I'm going to be adding some of the red into it to get a darker blue. And then I'm going to be adding some of the light green into it to then get to that lighter blue color. So I just wanted to show you how I'm using this mixing grid as a tool to figure out how to get my value structure down. And it's like nice to know ahead of time exactly what a color is going to do on your paper. So I'm going to take my blue and start painting it um, up here. I know I'm covering up that wave line, but again, uh, those lines were really just here as guides for like where to place my paint. I'm not going to be copying the pencil lines exactly with my paint. And I want to put a decent amount down because I'm going to be mixing it with the red right here on my paper. And if I put too thin of a layer, I'm not gonna have anything to mix with because it's kind of gonna dry instantly. So, okay, now I'm just gonna pick up a little bit of my red. I'm just gonna start painting that in here. And you can kind of like play around with like how much you mix this on your paper. I think like leaving some areas actually red, like unmixed, could look really cool, or you could blend it completely so it's just a dark purple. Um, I kind of have both areas in my finished piece. Um, and yeah, so that's going to create a nice dark area. And you can kind of see that in my finished piece. Like you wouldn't know at first, you just would be like, oh, that's just dark blue up there. But like the closer you get, like you can actually see those red tones in there. And I think that's pretty cool. It definitely adds like more visual depth and it like uh what's the word I'm looking for? It adds like makes your color like more rich on your painting to not blend everything out completely. If you've ever done like an underpainting on something that like is a similar idea where it kind of like it adds a lot of like tone to your painting and stuff. So um yeah, I kind of like that. So I'm going back right now with this is just the blue paint and I'm kind of just blending up into it and bringing down that blue with downward strokes here. I'm just going to do one more pass here with this. Okay, and then I'm going to be picking up that light green color and painting that into this area, but then not bringing it up all the way, kind of only going midway up to here with it. And again, this is another area you can pick how blended you want to get with it. I would just keep in mind, like, because your brush strokes are going to be visible with this kind of style, um, you just want to like I'm focusing on making sure my brush strokes are all kind of directionally going this way up into the wave, because it is uh, like evoking that same sense of motion and uh, also like sense of emotion of this is a very fast, big moving moving wave, um, and it can kind of be scary to look at. So I would just like keep that like in mind that like your brush in this style is going to be very expressive, and so um, like you can think about how to use that as a tool going forward. And I think I actually made this a little bit too light, like right here. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of my blue and kind of blend that back down. Okay, so we have a nice dark, dark wave to light wave situation going on right there. Um, and then in the background, there are like two other waves on this side, and I actually only drew one. I don't know why I left that off. Um, I think because on my, for some reason, this image didn't have a line here and I just totally missed it. So, um, I just need to keep that in mind that that's going to be going on right there. But I want to do the same thing. I want to go back into this area and I want to add the dark blue into a lighter blue. And this one kind of has like the dark part underneath the wave here. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on next. And I'm not really rinsing uh, my brush off at all. Just using it as it is. I know that there's some of that green on it now, and that's fine. That's fine with me. And then taking some of the red. So that's that part. And all of these are going to get like the capped with the wave part. So it's going to like cover up those lines. Like I can go and be more precise with that uh, white or lighter color line at the top. Um, and then coming into this area here. The only thing I don't know if I'll be able to show you is getting through all of the detail work I did with the gel pens because you do want your painting to be completely dry when you go over it with those gel pens. And this paint does dry relatively quickly, but you don't want anything to gum up the ballpoint pen. But it does work really well on dry paint. So I'll be able to show you a little bit um, with the demo piece I have completed already. But this one might still be drying in some places. So um, yeah, but I'll make sure to post uh, both of them on Mix when they're done. And um, if it's helpful, I can also kind of like post these pictures like in an article altogether. Um, so if you could download, I think that image and print it off if that were to be helpful. So um, going back to the painting, I'm going to be painting Mount Fuji here in the background, and it just has a little bit of blue on it. Um, so I'm just going to be painting the bottom of it right here. I don't have like many places on a bucket list to travel. Like I would love to travel, but it doesn't feel like something or at least right now I'm not really prioritizing it. But if someone were to be like, I could give you a ticket to go on a trip, like, and it'll be all paid for and everything, I would love to see Mount Fuji in person. Um, I think that would be super cool. Okay, cleaning off my brush. And I am now going to go in and start um, using my light phthalo green color to make the wave caps um, right there. And I'm not going to be like I know I've mentioned before, but I'm not going to be focusing on copying every single little uh, you know, curve and intricate detail that this has. What I want to focus on is making sure if I am curving my brush that the motion is going the same way and the uh kind of like the area that I'm filling up is similar visually. So you don't have to worry about getting like, oh, I only put two little curves here and there's three. Don't worry about that as much. Just more go for like that your brush strokes are going in the same direction, to like again evoke that same feeling of motion and emotion, um, with this piece. So, uh, I think sometimes it can be overwhelming to like want to reproduce a piece and think that you need to capture every single um, little detail. And it is hard also maybe even once you realize that you don't need to capture every single detail, but then like what do you take away from it so that people still know like it was inspired by a well-known piece or um, artist. Um, so that's kind of the some of the things to look at there is color scheme and I think like keeping the same compositional details as the piece rather than uh, all of like the illustrative details on it. So I'm just going in first before I start doing any of those curves, and I'm just kind of like blocking out the main shape of this.
Hey, Caitlin, it's looking good. We're about halfway through our session today.
All right, great, thank you. I'm putting this paint down a little bit thicker than my other paint because I am wanting it to cover up any of uh, the yellow that might have come over. And all of your bottles of paint have a opacity rating on them. And because they are the SoFlat formula, um, they are very pigment dense paints. But they do have like the light phthalo green is semi opaque. It's not all the way opaque. So if you need to do multiple layers of a paint color, it's probably going to be the green one. But still pretty dang opaque. And for this part where it's a little bit more detailed, I'm kind of mixing or I am alternating between holding my brush aside and using like a larger area of my brush and then holding my brush straight up and down and using that square tip to kind of get into like a small detail shape there. Oh, now I'm gonna go back and start making some more expressive marks into this area. And I'm starting off, like again, I'm using my brush straight up and down. So that narrow part is facing downwards. And I'm just glancing, as I'm doing this, I'm just glancing off at my photo reference of this print to just make sure I'm kind of getting the same like larger shapes of the composition into mine. Um, Again, not capturing every single little detail of the wave, but making sure it's covering up the same amount of area on the wave and that type of thing. So let me know if you have any questions about that in particular. And something I didn't do on my first go around of this is I did not go back in with blue paint on top of this. I like painted under with blue paint. And I think I'm gonna change that up with this one. I'm gonna maybe go back in and fill in some areas um, with a little bit of blue paint to define this big wave up here. All right, so we got that big one, and then we have the two other waves in the background. And I can kind of see where those are based off of where like my paint kind of changes color there. So first I'm just going to block out that top part of the wave. And then I'm going to be going back and doing those little curly cute expressive movements. And then this big one at the top. So it kind of goes up here first into the yellow area. Also going to go ahead and do the top of Mount Fuji here as well. Then I need to do the detail work here on this top wave. Okay, so that is a pretty good base there. And then I am going to go back in with some blue paint. And which I didn't do on this one. This is like this is underneath the screen layer. And then I went on top of it with some gel pen. And that's I mentioned at the very beginning that I use some blue gel pen as well, and that's also what's in there. But this time I think I'm going to go in with blue paint. But I do want the blue paint to be lighter initially. So I am just going to do a little bit of a mixture here just with my paintbrush, mixing together some of the blue and the green to get a light blue. And it doesn't have to be like completely mixed. I just didn't want it to have to, this is such a small area. I'm not going to have a lot of space to mix it on the actual wave itself. Um, but I just wanted to make sure to get in here and get some of these uh, underneath. Like it's like they're almost shadowed this area. Um, yeah, I'm liking how that looks already. Then I'm just gonna go in and add it a little bit on some of these. It's like some areas that have a little bit of light blue in here. Um, and then I'm going to add in some brush strokes into this wave with the light blue down here. Then I'll just a little bit at the top one, not a lot. Again, I'm just kind of glancing at that reference image just to loosely reference different colors and shapes. All right, and then there is, like, I kind of filled out the outside of this big wave, but there's this inside part that also has a lot of blue in it. So I'm going to try to capture some of that area right here. And I do just need to mix a little bit more of that light blue color. So just going to be and sometimes when I'm translating some of these shapes, it's like I'm not even taking the exact shape at a certain location. Like sometimes I just see a shape that I really like and I'll include it kind of in a similar way. Um, so again, this can be a lot like looser than you might think. All right. That's looking pretty good to me. I'm cleaning my brush off. And then I'm going to be going into the light phthalo green color as is to do these upward brush strokes here. And I remember I kind of struggled with, I want to get that, they'll all kind of have to be parallel to each other. So it's better, at least I think a good way to do it is to kind of more start in the middle of where your lines are going to be rather than at the edge. Because sometimes that can like throw off your perspective a little bit. So um, and what I did for these is I kept them pretty far apart, like, or not as close together as they are in the original. Um, and then I went back with my white gel pen once it was dry and added in even more lines into the wave. So keep that in mind that that'll be an option to fill it out even more. And then this one in front, I kind of want to go over it with more of a dry brush for that, so it doesn't cover the blue completely. So that looks good to me. And then we have some tinier little lines to do in here. And I'm just gonna just hint at it here and then finish the rest with my gel pen. There. And then we have, it's just to keep reminding you guys what the original here looks like. So I have, these ones are a lot darker down under here. And then we have these ones that kind of curve up into the wave a little more. And again, this one I feel like is hard to uh do with a brush and be really precise. I'm actually wondering if flipping my painting would help. Oh, no. Well, I'll have to I'll have to go cover that up with something. Um, but you do have the white gel pen to go and make these lines even more detailed. I'm gonna see if I can fix that little blue area a little bit, taking a very tiny amount of the blue and just going over that part that's not on the wave. And then cleaning my brush again. And now I'm gonna go over that white part and blend it out, or the white green part and blend it out. Boom, like it never even happened. You'd never know. Um, okay, so here is where I'm going to have to pause this for at least for a little bit just to let it dry. Because the rest of the work I did on this was with the gel pens. But I am going to go back to this piece and just kind of show you what I did with the gel pens. And we will, once this sits for just a minute, we will do a washi tape peel as well. So let me talk you through some of this. I should have like put this under a book or something after I finished it. It's not like really warped, it's just like slightly curved. Um, so I'll have to remember to do that after this. Um, so I want to show you some of the areas where um, it differs from this piece. And maybe I'll just bring this up a little bit. Um, so you can see where I went in and added detail. So there we go. That's kind of confusing to look at. It's like with this being wet, it's kind of tricky to have both of these in here. But I want to show how this kind of has like a blunt into it. And in the original, those are very like, I don't know, creepy crawly, I guess. They're not very thick. They get very thin and very, very like, I don't know, spidery kind of. And this piece here did look like this one when I was at that step. And the way that I got the waves to look more creepy crawly like that was by going in with my white gel pen and then just like extending um, those lines at the very end. I didn't color over the whole uh, wave part to get that shape. It's really just at the ends. Um, but I think like when you look at it as a whole, it does a very good job of capturing and conveying those shapes, even though it's just the end. Something else I did was at the top of each part of this wave, I went ahead and went over it with the white gel pen as well. And that like this is the green is so close to a white, it's not like a huge difference, but I think it just does just enough to make this look even lighter at the top. And visually, that is where the light would be hitting it. So if you were going to be using white on it to make it look lighter, like that would be the area to hit it. So every single area here, I went over with the white gel pen. I mentioned I also brought it up into the wave part right here. I did more lines into here. Excuse me. And then I went over Mount Fuji. And then something I did to add a little bit of depth, which like the light is perfect right here. It's like really showing off the metallic quality of the silver gel pen. But when it's not silver, it's just, gray. Like if it's not too shiny, like it's the light's not making it shine right there. And it's adding like just enough depth into that wave um, to get some of those like darker areas to show up, which I did on the one I did tonight. Um, I did put into the blue paint. But after that's dry, I think I'll still go in with silver. And the areas just won't be quite as thick. I think I'll just more like outline a bunch of stuff in silver really than it's just more like enhancing it rather than like using it for um its color, I guess. So um did not add the little like birds into the sky yet, which I should probably do that. So these are like actual birds in the original, but I didn't feel like I needed to draw like the birds very detailed. And so I just like left all of the detail out of them and like only went with um like color shape kind of. And oh, and I actually forgot one part. We need to go back and do that. I forgot to put the trees in mine. So let's do that really quick here. We'll add the birds and the trees. So the trees is fun because we get to do another little mixing a session of our paint and we get to pull out the mixing card. Oh wait, that's not the one I have two mixing cards I have out. Okay. Um, and we can look here and see to get our green color, we need to mix the yellow and the blue, and it's going to give us this green color. Oops, sorry, just went slightly out of focus there. There we go. And so this one, I believe, has a little bit more yellow in it than blue, since it's the way that I set up this grid. So when I did these mixes, I tried to use like a slightly different ratio. So I could see what would happen if like had more blue or if it had more yellow or more green versus blue or red versus blue and so on. Um, so I'm going to lean a little bit more yellow with my blue then when I'm mixing instead of making it like a 50-50. And again, kind of with this light blue, I'm just going to do like a very small mixture onto my palette here. And if you got out a lot of paint like me, and you're going to have some left over after finishing this composition, make sure not to waste your paint and to go just like paint something random, even if it's completely abstract, in like a sketchbook page or an art journal. I'll show you what I did with my extra paint last time I did this. It's really nothing much to look at, but it'll be a fun piece to use as a base in an art journal. Oh, I need to be painting in front of this. There you go. All right, so we added the trees. They look great. Super simple. And on this version, I did just outline them in the gold gel pen just for fun because more is more when it comes to gel pens. And then now I'm just gonna go add my little white, or gosh, I keep calling this paint white just because like I'm using it as my white in this composition. But I'm gonna go add the little bird blobs. And if you look closely, you can still see like right here, like those are my pencil lines from transferring that. So like I can kind of, if I squint really hard and look, I can I can kind of work out where I should be putting some of these blobs. But I can't see that with all of them. But that's what I'm going to start with. But again, those pencil lines were just a very loose guide to where I wanted these. You can also vary the size of these. And then there's a couple more up here. Okay, that looks good to me. Let's go ahead and do the washi tape peel. And since we're getting close to the end of class, while I'm doing that, think about if you have any remaining questions you want to shoot in the chat. or prepare anything you would like to share at the end of class when Lee comes back on. But for now, enjoy the washi tape. I'll make sure to like really get my camera down here so you can enjoy it.
Is this the ASMR portion of the class?
Yeah, I don't think you'll be able to hear it.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Okay.
but uh, you know, it will be as satisfying as ASMR stuff.
Pretty straight line to me.
Oh yeah. I was very pleased with how this paper performs with the washi tape.
It's great. So yeah, as Caitlin mentioned, we have about 10 minutes left. We don't have many participants left. We did have a bunch. It is a Tuesday evening on the East Coast, so I totally understand. But looks like we have a few people, Melissa and M Mole. If you want to share what you've been making, if you have been making, we'd love to see it. If not, totally fine. You can also share it on the ArtSnacks mix group when you feel comfortable that it's in a place to be shared. So, Caitlin, it's in a spot where it's dry enough to do the gel pens. Is that the next step?
That would be the next step. This piece isn't dry enough. I would like, I guess I'm super careful with my gel pens, and I do have some like thicker areas like up in here. You can like even see where it's pooling up. So I'm gonna make sure that this piece is totally dry overnight before I go in with my gel pens. But my other piece, if I needed to show you how the gel pens perform on it, is in a place where I can do that. It already has a lot of the detail work on it, but I can add some more in if need be. But that would be the last step on this piece, would just be to do some of the detail work.
In the chat, Melissa says, thanks. This was so great. I'm so glad you have shared this with us.
Awesome. So and like, I don't know, when you do the washi tape border, it just makes the whole thing feel like it like really makes it feel like a piece of art when you pull it off and you have that really straight border. Really satisfying.
Yeah, it really like
Uh,
finishes it and grounds it as a piece.
Yeah, totally. I need to erase. This is like a little bit of graphite here that I have on there, but just to show you um, here, I can like go in and uh, show you how this really does draw over this really nicely. So this is completely dry, and I can just go in and add the white details like right over the blue or the green, and it'll show up on both. I need to look at my reference so I don't add any crazy lines. Um, but it's definitely adds that little bit of detail that the just with the paint is missing, especially when you're being so expressive with your brush strokes. It um, is able to bring that back to looking really detailed like the original print. But I'm still being pretty loose even with my gel pen details. Yeah, there's a little preview of kind of how these perform on top of the paint. I'm hoping with my remaining live stream for this uh, box, we're going to be using the gel pens a little bit more um, during the stream. Um, and you guys can give me some feedback on mix if this sounds good, but I was going to be doing some pop art inspired work and using bin day dots, if you've ever seen Roy Lichtenstein's work, where it's kind of like using uh like comic book, like almost like halftone type dots in your composition. And I think using the gel pens will are a really good tool for that because they're so opaque, like the white ones. And but then also I think the metallic ones doing something like that that's going to add like a lot of shine and visual interest will be a fun project to work on. So um, yeah, definitely looking forward to that last live stream. Um, and let me
Great.
know if you have anything else to wrap up the session, or if there's anything you'd like me to touch on before we go.
I love the pop art. Melissa says that sounds great as well. So that's
Awesome.
excellent. But if no one has anything to share, we can wrap up a few minutes early. I'm going to throw it to Caitlin, forward facing camera. There you are. Take it
Thank
away.
you. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining and hanging out while we did this Hokusai inspired piece. I really love how our color palette was able to translate so well for this piece. And I'm going to be posting an article on Mix with both of these pieces finished. I think I will go ahead and photograph this one before I add the gel pen and then finish it up and photograph it again to include in the article, just so if you needed to like if you needed to recall like what stage this looked at and like how much detail I included, um, that I'll have that documented in there for you. And I'll also be posting the two reference photos that I used during class, the one of the finished Hokusai, like an all color one, and this one of the outline that kind of has some of the transfer markings I used on mine. So look out for that on Mix. And thanks so much for hanging out tonight.